All right, so training camp officially wrapped up for the Indianapolis Colts yesterday in Grand Park in a joint practice against the Green Bay Packers, whom the team will once again play this Saturday in their second preseason game. Now, we've got good news coming out of that joint practice, and we have some bad news. I'll start with the good news because let's start this thing off on a positive note. One, training camp ending is a prime signal that the regular season is almost here, and of course, that's what we are all patiently waiting for. In fact, some of us impatiently waiting for the regular season. And then, two, not for anything, I'll speak for myself. Maybe you feel the same. I was kind of getting tired of talking about the practices in the sense that I'm tired of trying to take these overarching takeaways from what we're seeing day to day in practice, right? It's kind of much like, don't get me wrong, if I was in Indianapolis, I would be at every single practice I can possibly be at because I live and breathe the game of football. But at the same time, it's kind of like, when you go into the summer, right? And you're really excited about the nice weather and it's 80 degrees, it's 90 degrees. And you're like, holy shit, look at this weather, man. Let's go do something. And then it's a week straight of 95 degrees with humidity. And you kind of go back inside and say, I'm sitting in the damn air conditioner again. And you call me back in fall, right? My point is that it gets old fast talking about the practices is my point. And the Colts yesterday against the Packers, by all reports, were absolutely given the business. Now, I'll be more precise. Let me be fair, actually, to the Indianapolis Colts, okay? Now, because we're talking about the bad news now, okay? In case you haven't figured that one out. The Colts offense struggled against the Packers defense. And on the other side of the ball, yes, the Colts defense performed well against that Packers offense, but the Packers offense was missing so many guys. Of course, they had no quarterback. Well, they had Malik Willis, who ran for about 2,500 yards against us in week 1 last year, but no quarterback in the sense that there was no Jordan Love, right? And then the receiver room was so depleted that the only guy that the Packers anticipate having a reasonable amount of playing time that was out there was Matthew Golden, their first-round rookie. So take away what you want from negative reports about that practice. Keep in mind, last week's joint practice against the Ravens, right, was, the offense put on a clinic, and then they came out Thursday night, and ultimately things didn't go quite that way. And then last year's joint practice, rather, against the Cincinnati Bengals, a now infamous joint practice, which I will not discuss the details of as to not speak it into the universe once more. You could look it up yourself. That practice was very telling about what we were going to see that season. So as far as a practice goes and what you see in it, it can go either way. Like, it's certainly not nothing, right? Because, of course, the guys are out there playing football to the degree in which you're allowed to in a practice setting. And when you're versing another team, that's about as close as you're going to get to a game on Sunday without actually playing a game on Sunday. But then again, to speak to that point, practices certainly, as much as they're not nothing, they're certainly not everything. What is everything is, again, how the Colts are going to show up in real games against real competition. And, of course, a critical part of knowing how that's going to go is having the quarterback position figured out, which the Colts, as of today, have not done yet. And listen, I understand football is a team game, right? The ultimate team game. You're as good as the sum of your parts. And we've seen a team like the Baltimore Ravens make it to the Super Bowl with a Trent Dilfer at quarterback, okay? But ultimately, when you're adding up the sum of your parts to try to figure out whether or not your team is going to be good, the math is weighted so heavily in favor of the quarterback position that it's hard to feel great about kind of your success for that season without having a guy behind center that you can trust. And that's not only the aggravating part of the Indianapolis Colts right now, but it's the aggravating part about the Colts really in most of the time under Chris Ballard, because I could speak to the roster and how good it is right now. You talk about the weapons that this team has on offense, and Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, Adonai Mitchell, Tyler Warren. Of course, you have an offensive line. Sure, you have 2 new starters in Banner Tortellini and Matt Gonsalves, the Long Island guy. But you have those 3 core pieces in Bernard Raymond and Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith, right? So they have a culture of performing well. And the defense, we know the moves they've made. You overall look at the Colts roster right now, and sure, you're not sure about every single aspect of it, but such is the case with every roster in football. This Colts roster, top to bottom, you could argue is one of the better that they've had under Chris Ballard. And we know that any time the team has had a quarterback under Chris Ballard, they've been a playoff team. Now, the issue, of course, is that not very often have they had good quarterback play, which ultimately is why they haven't often been in the playoffs under Chris Ballard. But, we could make it like the problems with this organization have been about the roster building. In my opinion, I think that just becomes a thing. Like, as the season goes on, you just get mad at everyone and you talk about it. Generally speaking, in my opinion, If this team had just had Andrew Luck, and I'm not making an excuse, I'm just making an overarching point about the roster. If this team had Andrew Luck, we would really have no questions about what's going on here, but they don't have Andrew Luck. And of course, the team and Chris Ballard have been unable to identify and acquire their quarterback of the future. Now, that guy may be on the roster right now. And even though we don't know who it's going to be between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, here's what I can tell you. The Colts are absolutely desperate for, they are begging for, they are pleading for Anthony Richardson to come out here and win this job. They are saying, Anthony, please give us a damn, we have suffered. Please give us a reason to start you week 1 against the Miami Dolphins. And unfortunately, so far, Anthony Richardson has not quite done that. Now, in all fairness to him, he certainly had taken a lead prior to the first preseason game, albeit a slight lead. But then, of course, he had the misread, right? He doesn't pick up the back end. He doesn't, whenever he was supposed to see that blitzer, he certainly wasn't supposed to take a hit that would have put down a small mule, right? I mean, he was supposed to see that at some point, and then his pinky went off into the galaxy. So it was kind of a sobering reminder of why we brought in Daniel Jones to begin with. And when he had finally started to take a lead, boom, he knocked himself right back down to where we're in an even competition here. And I mean, now you're talking about, 3 weeks? They started camp on July 23rd with neither of these guys taking this thing by storm. Daniel Jones had a prime opportunity, of course, when Richardson went down last week. I mean, what a perfect opportunity. You're talking about a guy, they brought you in because this guy could not stay healthy. He goes out, he gets hurt, and all you have to do is come out and play pretty damn well, and you take a commanding lead. But instead, Daniel Jones came out and played like himself, meaning that, of course, he didn't take a commanding lead of the QB1 role. And now we go into this game against the Packers this weekend. Once again, Anthony Richardson being given a prime opportunity to take this damn job. Keep in mind, last week they started him. If Anthony Richardson last week had come in and played the quarter and a half that he was supposed to play and did it at least a pretty good level, we would already know the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. Instead, now we once again wait to see him play this week, and make no mistake about it. If he comes out and plays well, we will know the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts early next week, and it will be him. That's if it all goes according to plan. If it does not go according to plan and he either gets hurt again or doesn't play well, the Colts, in my opinion, I suspect are going to kick the can down the road as long as they possibly can on naming this starting quarterback. And dare I say, push this thing into week 3 of the preseason, which is relatively unheard of. I mean, have you ever heard of anything like that? A team starting their starting quarterback all 3 games of the preseason? I've never in my life have I heard of anything like that. But when you're a team like the Indianapolis Colts, who has been absolutely deprived of a quarterback and is just desperate for one, they're going to do anything they can to have Anthony Richardson win this job, because I'm telling you right now, they don't want Jones to win this thing. It's not a good look for the organization. But at the same time, on the other side of it, you do have Shane Steichen. And of course, the big buzzword that we heard was the word consistency, right? And that's what he's thrown around. But if Richardson comes out and does anything other than play well after kind of an up and down week of practice headed into this preseason game against the Packers, again, you end up in a tough spot if you're the Indianapolis Colts, because you can't use the word consistency and then watch Richardson get hurt in a preseason game, then play subpar in a preseason game, and then be up and down in practice leading up to that subpar performance, and then just turn around and start him. You sort of lose credibility when you do something like that. Now, the issue, of course, with me saying that is that I will now take away my own credibility, because I'd start him regardless. Like, I would start Anthony Richardson right now, regardless of Saturday's outcome for the Indianapolis Colts, and regardless of, God forbid, they have to play a week 3 preseason game and play this quarterback battle out. I'd start Anthony Richardson regardless, because if you are the Colts right now, you've sort of backed yourself into a corner, and we're going to talk about why I feel that is, why I would start him regardless of Saturday's result, and kind of dive deep into how I'm viewing this quarterback battle as a whole right now and its implications on the organization, maybe a little bit more. But before we do, you know what it is? I got to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. We'll try to get there by somewhere near the beginning of the season. We'll see. But if you keep coming back and joining the show, or perhaps it's your first day here and you say, you know what, not too shabby, you could hit that subscribe button. Never miss another episode again. Audio listeners, leave a 5-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show, but most importantly, be civil in the comments section. You don't know what the person on the other end of the keyboard is going through today. Of course, even in the face of the turmoil that we face as fans, and boy, do we face, we have suffered as Colts fans right now, particularly after what we saw for the first decade of the 2000s, right? It has not been the same for quite some time. My point in bringing all that up is that we're on the same team. So if you disagree with someone in the comments section, have a discussion. Like, there's no need to drag each other down. It's kind of miserable enough, right, for us as Colts fans. I hate to be negative, but it's kind of just, it's been painful in many, many ways. But neither here nor there. Let's get back to business because I want to quickly explore a world where Anthony Richardson comes out this weekend and doesn't perform. And I know, of course, number one, that's the pessimistic side, and that's unfortunate for you to have to listen to. And two, I'm kind of getting ahead of the conversation a little bit, but that is the more fascinating side of the conversation. Of course, if he comes out and plays well, again, he'll be named the starter early next week, and we can talk about that and get excited and all that stuff. But the more nuanced side of it, where there's more discussion, is where he comes out and doesn't win this job clearly this Saturday. You end up in a very weird spot if you're Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, because many would say that your jobs right now as the head coach and general manager, respectively, are on the line this season. And I would argue one step further that your jobs are in the hands of this young man, Anthony Richardson. And while I certainly would not want all my eggs in the Richardson basket, which is why they brought in Jones, excuse me, a little taco bowl getting burped back up. That good lunch I just had, actually. Basmati rice and we're not even going to get into it, okay? Back to business, okay? Justin, stay on track. That's why they brought in Jones, and that's why I supported them bringing in Jones, because you wouldn't want all your eggs in that basket. At the same time, I certainly, if I was them, would not want to have to admit that Daniel Jones is better than Richardson before the season even started, because that in of itself, even if it's in the name of honest competition and making sure you put out the best possible product possible for Colts fans in terms of actually trying to win games this year, to start Jones over Richardson is kind of an admission of failure to some degree, because keep in mind, not only did they draft Richardson, which is the obvious side of this, but they are the ones who allowed the Panthers to trade up to the number 1 overall pick past the Houston Texans, right? In a pick that was available to anyone that was willing to buy it. Everyone knew Chicago was trying to trade out of the number 1 pick that year, okay? So the Texans had the 2nd overall pick that year, and just like you, needed a quarterback. Now, everyone that year, other than sleepy Frank Reich, who got fired midway through the season, and the abysmal Panthers organization, everyone knew that C.J. Stroud, going into that draft as a prospect, was the best quarterback in that class, or at least at minimum. You know, if you want to sit here and hold out hope for Richardson kind of being a better prospect at the time, if you want to speak like that, which, I think is dishonest as a fan at this juncture. It's not to say that he can't get better than him in due time, but I'm talking about at the time. Stroud, at minimum, was the most pro-ready guy, ready to come in and make an impact. And everyone knew that. Now, in all fairness, I didn't see the Colts board, right? I didn't see anyone's board. But I will say this. I watched the film, and it was so clear and obvious to me that if the Colts, put it like this, if the Colts had Richardson above Stroud as a prospect, that in of itself is a fireable offense, because it's a take that would have been detached from reality at the time. Now, I have enough respect for Shane Steichen and all the things that he's done as an offensive coordinator in this league to know that he had C.J. Stroud ranked above Anthony Richardson in that draft, meaning that not only did they feel Stroud was better, but they knew that the Texans could end up with him and did not take the opportunity to trade up past that team. So coupling all of that with the fact that you took a guy that, instead of being your franchise quarterback, is now backing up Daniel Jones to start a season 3 years removed from that draft, that kind of ends up being this shitty lame duck scenario where this season becomes much more of a formality than it does anything else that projects towards the future of the organization. Because we know at best Daniel Jones, who's 20 games under 500 in his career, no disrespect to the guy, I think he's better than he gets credit for. But in the best case scenario, Jones, much like Minshew, will get you to 9-8, and that's not going to cut it. At least 9-8 with an Anthony Richardson At least that allows you to maybe give things another go with what we have in place. So if you ask me, if you're the Colts right now, regardless of what happens this weekend, and we'll talk about it coming out of the game, of course, you got to make it work with Richardson some way, somehow. However you need to stitch him up and put him back together and get him out there, whether you're rolling him out in a wheelchair, whatever it is. You ever see Scott Sterling, the legend? You got to roll with Anthony Richardson. You got to trot him out there at all costs, right? You got to put him back together, tape him up until the wheels come off with Anthony Richardson, because at least you go down with the damn ship if you're if you're Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. But if he sits on the bench and you roll out with Jones, barring a miracle, the likes of which I'm not sure Indy has ever seen in terms of the football team, you end up in a spot where at the end of the season, sure, you have a great roster to support a quarterback, but given that Daniel Jones came out and he played the way he did, and of course, again, I'm projecting now, right? But he comes out, plays the way he does. Anthony Richardson's on your bench. You have new ownership in the Irsay girls, and there'd be a very fair case to be made. And I say this as a Ballard apologist and someone who really loves Steichen. I think he's brilliant as an offensive mind in this league. You have a case to be made that you two should not be the ones choosing the next quarterback, even if everything else is in place. So if you're the Colts right now, you need Anthony Richardson to win this job. And any excuse that he gives you to start him week one, trust me, they will take. But, of course, he has to do that. So all we can do in the meantime is hope that he just, in one of these games, shows that he's clearly and obviously the right decision for week one. But up to this point, again, we don't know whether or not we can trust Anthony Richardson. And even once he's named the starter, we won't know. But at least we'll be looking forward to finding out the answer, right? So that's where I stand on the quarterback position. And one of these discussions we're going to have moving forward is kind of this idea, do the Colts have a quarterback problem? Right? You look at the roster, we're always kind of happy with the roster, but we don't have a quarterback. Do they have a quarterback problem, or do they have a Chris Ballard problem? That's going to be a legitimate question that you have to ask. Even as someone who's always defended Chris Ballard, I don't know if I would want him to pick the next guy if this thing doesn't work out over here. So with that, you kind of have to, if you're Ballard, give us something to judge here, right? You got to put in Anthony Richardson. We all know it. And that is what it is. And that's an episode. And my name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. Like, subscribe if you have not yet. And as always, go Colts.